My name is Jacob Larson, and this is a Common Sense Show. With the weather the way it's been, you may be in need of some tree removal or getting some of those trees trimmed back. If so, contact MR Tree Service. They're a locally owned and operated company that has been doing business in the Lane County area for over 26 years. They're equipped with a 60-foot bucket truck, chipper, stump grinders, bobcat loader, and chip truck. They're also the only one in Lane County with a 24-hour response team and truck equipped for work day or night. They are licensed, bonded, and insured. Their specialty is tree and stump removal, but they will do all phases of tree care except spraying. So if during this weather you've had a tree fall or one that looks like it may fall and you need it removed, contact Mike at MR Tree Service. The number's 541-689-7266. Once again, that number is 541-689-7266. Last week, we talked about the commercialization of Christmas, how the spirit of Christmas and what it means isn't found or lost in how many lights we hang up or what decorations we choose to display. It isn't found or lost in the size of gift we choose to give. The spirit of Christmas remains where it has always been, in the hearts and minds of men, and that includes women. So the so-called commercialization of Christmas is really just another attack on Christmas thrown out there by people who are looking to poke jabs at the holiday and imply that it means something other than it does. The reality is you control how you think about and participate in the holiday. So what is in your heart and mind and how you go about this holiday season is between you and God. My hope is that you thoroughly enjoy the season with the people you care about and simply ignore the people who are set on trying to ruin it for you. Then we talked about the war on Christmas, how the liberal media likes to scoff at the idea, but that it's really a war on Christianity, that if secularists had their way, they'd take Christ out of Christmas entirely. I got an email shortly after the show from Gina Banda that said, it's definitely a war on Christianity. If Christmas was simply about a make-believe man on a sleigh, they wouldn't care, right? Which begs the question, if they personally truly think God is a make-believe fairy tale, just like Santa, then why do they feel so threatened? And that's a damn good question. I think the answer is simple. There is something, the belief in God and Christmas, and they know it. So if you're sitting out there and you're an unbeliever, maybe you should ask yourself, what's really bothering you? And try to be honest with yourself, because the bottom line is, if you get your panties in a bunch over a plastic nativity scene or a frickin' tree with the lights on, you're a petty, ignorant D-bag, and you need to get your head examined. And I mean that in the nicest way possible. Okay, so we've got a lot of things to cover today, and frankly, I can't say as I'm in the best of moods. I have got Therin. I've actually asked Leta Sellers. She was on the show before as a guest. I don't really consider her a guest on this show right now. I just want her input in the topic of discussion. So if you have any questions for Therin, myself, or Leta during the show, please call in at 541-284-7953. Once again, that number is 541-284-7953. Give us a call and tell me what you think. We've had some mass shootings take place. Shortly after the shootings, I think everybody who writes, whether it be songs, books, whatever, blogs, I think that the situation has been on everyone's mind. And typically when people write, they sit down and try to express their thought on paper or on the computer or however. I tried to do that, and I just found myself all over the place. Couldn't quite articulate exactly what was going through my head. I think that people are looking for answers. They're looking for reasons of why things happen in an effort to find something to do. People want to do something. And I think that there's been an explosive thing go online in terms of gun control, and the gun debate is in full force now. But I think this goes way beyond gun control. And I think the answers lay in the minds of men, which is something that I've talked about, in different pieces throughout my shows. It's a psychological issue amongst the shooters, and it's the ability to recognize people who are hurting in need of help among the society. I think we've become disconnected and detached with each other. And these happenings are a clear indicator of that. So the questions that run through my head when I hear stuff like this, I actually posted this as my son on Facebook prior to the show just to get people thinking along these lines about the guns, but I don't think the guns are the issue. I want to know something like this takes place. The thing that pops into my head is like, now can we bring prayer back in schools? Now are we allowed to pray again? It seems like every time something like this happens, everybody jumps on board and everybody wants to pray. Why is it okay to pray now when it wasn't okay to pray prior? And I think that prayer has something to do with it. Prayer brings people together. So why aren't we promoting that? Why are we scoffing at that type of thing? Now can we put Christ back into Christmas? That was another one of my questions. We're so dead set on taking attacks against Christianity, taking Christ out of Christmas or Christ out of different aspects of our life. Is that such a great idea? Should we be scoffing at those things? Should we be rolling our eyes when people bring that up? I don't necessarily think so. Why do we ignore or dismiss the spiritual aspects of things in this life? Everybody is really concerned about the physical well-being of a person, the emotional well-being of a person, but nobody seems to want to touch bases on the spiritual aspect of things. I don't care what your religion is. The bottom line is we have a spiritual element in our being, who we are, that makes up who we are. And for people to dismiss that, for people to ignore that, I think it's a major mistake. Now can we call that which is evil, evil? When these things take place, these mass shootings, situations like this take place, we are witnessing, we are viewing evil. It is incarnate. It is physical. It's actually been put right in front of our face. This is an evil. Can we call it evil? Can we set the BS aside, the beating around the bush of what things are, and actually point to it and go, you know what? That is evil. And we can't sit there and be judged and say, oh, well, you can't really call it that, or that's not really politically correct to call it that, or there's different perspective. You know what? Evil is evil, and it's pretty darn clear. And I think if we're not coming to terms with it, if we're not willing to look at it and go, hey, you know what? That's a spade. Calling a spade, that's evil. That's wrong. We're never going to overcome stuff like this. We're never going to see past it. We're never going to get through it. How many more people need to die before we call a spade? The other thing is, when I see stuff like this, we all tend to speak of God and we all pray for our families, and the president's been quoted as doing that. So where is the separation of church and state? And I know a lot of people are going to look at me and are going to say, hey, why would you even bring that up now? That's a political thing. It's not a political thing, folks. That's the part that pisses me off about it. There is no separation of church and state. It's a complete and total hogwash. It's bunk. It doesn't exist. The things that make us up as individuals, the very things I'm talking about right here, recognizing that which is evil, prayer in our schools, having a spiritual aspect who you are, that is what makes up who we are. The laws that we choose to govern us are based on things like that. That taking care of the whole person, not just the individual. Why is it deemed permissible by unbelievers or secularist establishment for our elected officials to encourage prayer and the strengthening of belief in God during these times? You always hear about secular progressives and stuff talking out about the separation of church and state and prayer in our schools and stuff like that prior to this, but they're quiet as a mouse when somebody does a mass shooting. They don't say a word. Where's their outcry then? If they're absolutely against it, if they don't agree, if they think it's wrong, why aren't they stepping up right now and denouncing the president for telling people to have faith in God or trust in God? Where are they? It's a total joke. If the need for prayer and looking to God is present after these events, why aren't we encouraging this type of thing prior to these events, where we're all coming together and praying? Why is that scoffed at? People look at it, you get a pastor up on stage, pastor like Ken Brown. I had him on the show a couple, 3 shows ago. He's talking about the hearts and minds of men, caring for your fellow man, stuff like that. But the people scoff at him for that on a routine basis. They roll his eyes on that. We don't want to talk about that. But then when they have a situation like this go down, all of a sudden out of the blue, oh, hey, let's join hands. Let's pray. You know what? Give me a break. Okay, so a comprehensive psychological profile of the killer needs to be established. And I've got kind of a brief thing that I wrote out on paper just based on what I read. It's a really hard thing to based on the things that I've read. They're having a hard time pinpointing it. But a comprehensive psychological profile of the killer needs to be established. And once it's done, the question I have is, when is the profiling, when the profiling is done, will this be an accepted tool to prevent these events in society? Everybody, when it came to terrorists and stuff coming into our country, people were really arguing against profiling. That it was a bad idea. It's racial. It's discrimination. They threw up all these things. I think that when it comes to criminal activity and for law enforcement, profiling is a required thing. It's necessary. And I think they currently do it. They're going to continue to do it because it works. And so what I'm saying is this. Is anybody objecting to profiling when it comes to mass shootings? If it came to protecting our kids from being shot in a classroom, our 6-year-old babies, would you be against profiling then? When it's on your home turf, you're going to sit there, you're going to stand up and argue against profiling? I think for the most part, people are going to be so much in for it. One of the reasons, the bottom line is really there is no argument. There's no justified argument for being against profiling when it comes to protecting a kid. I really don't see the argument there. I'd love to hear it if you got one. Call into the radio, 541-284-7953. Tell me to my face exactly, well, not to my face, over the radio. You tell me what the argument would be against profiling when it comes to protecting our kids. And the other thing is, why are we so careful to bring up the moral decay that's happening in society? Why do we demonize or dismiss people to do that? See, I know that people listening right now, I posted these questions on my Facebook wall, and I already got people on my wall scoffing at it. They're rolling their eyes at it. They're cracking jokes at it. And they're going, Jake, you're talking about stuff. That doesn't matter. That doesn't matter. You know what? Hey, newsflash. Maybe it does. Maybe it does. One of the articles I had, maybe some of this stuff matters. I pulled up a timeline of mass shootings in the U.S. since Columbine. Do you realize we've had 61 mass killings in a 30-year time period since Columbine? Maybe you shouldn't scoff at prayer, eh? Just a thought. Maybe you shouldn't scoff at things about spirituality and stuff like that. I'm not the sharpest knife in the drawer. Not saying I am. I ain't the model Christian. Nobody who knows me would argue that. But the bottom line is maybe there's something a little bit more going on here. And maybe it's something that shouldn't be scoffed at or dismissed. Now that's my rant, guys. I tried to go through it as fast as I could. But frankly, like I said, some of this stuff kind of pisses me off. So we've got Therin, we've got Leta here. Let's join the discussion, shall we? So what do you think about some of the stuff I said?
That was a great rant.
Was my words exactly?
Yeah, I give you a 9.5 on that one for sure.
A 9.5 rant.
Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, I think that. What do you think, Leta? You worked in the school system, the public school system, for how many years?
22.
22 years, and you sat in the front. You're the secretary, so you sat up front.
Basically the receptionist.
Yeah. So the stuff that these teachers are going through, the bottom line is you probably would have been somebody that would have been killed in a situation like that.
I've actually been through a training program they had at one particular time for receptionists and people that were in that type of job. But I seriously, in my job career, did have a man come in one time, the person who checked out the students to parents and legal guardians, and he wanted to have his son right that moment. And he wasn't a legal guardian, and he got very threatening with me, and we came very close to having to police. Luckily, he left, but it's a very frightening experience.
Yeah, so I think under a circumstance like that, did you pray a little bit?
To my vice principal that he would get there in a hurry and save me. No, that's not my style.
That's not your style?
No.
Well, what do you think about these killings?
I'm horrified by them, and I really, for as often as I can be at odds with you, Jacob, everything you said, I absolutely agree with. I think one of the topics you brought up that I would most like to comment on first, at least, is the topic of why, when a situation like this happens, do we all have the need to pray when we don't possibly normally pray. What is it about that compels us to do that? And myself, I am not a religious person, but I do consider myself spiritual, and I too am compelled, whether it's a candlelight vigil. I think for people, if we're going to bring Christianity into it, there are many people of different faiths. I think it brings us a bonding, regardless of how you feel, and it as you said earlier, it makes you want to feel like you're doing something. It's a connection. You want to feel a connection.
It is a connection, and that's the thing. Because seriously, I'm not sitting here advocating specifically for Christianity. That's not my gig. That's not what I'm doing. I'm simply saying that there's something to the power of prayer when it comes to a group of people all united in a common bond, common purpose, praying for a specific thing. And I think that's something that people tend to dismiss. They overlook, and they tend to shut down, especially, non-believers, secularists, whatever. I mean, they like to dismiss that, and I think I think it's foolish. I can't for the life of me figure out why. I don't understand why they would be so quick when it comes to the spiritual aspect of who they are, why they're so quick to stuff that down, not think about it, not talk about it, or even argue against that. I mean, it seems ridiculous to me.
To me, it seems like maybe they're threatened by it, just by their own, influences, their, what has shaped their own belief systems, and then that maybe counters it. And so, nobody likes to be told that they're wrong, and some people get very defensive, over their beliefs. Even remotely counter to their belief, they've got that defense mechanism springing up.
Yeah, and that's the thing. I mean, I'm not, like I said, I'm not simply strictly advocating for Christianity, but I mean, it's something that I have witnessed, I've seen. I mean, people tend to, when something tragic like this happens, they immediately, they tend to seek out, faith-based things. Mm-hmm. I mean, it just happens, and there is nothing else. I mean, you look at, I always say. I always like to make a joke when it comes to Christmas holiday times, wish you a Merry Christmas, stuff like that. It's like, when something takes place like this, I can't help but wonder, if you're an atheist, you're a non-believer, what do you have to offer? What do you have? What condolences can you give? I mean, what exactly does it mean? There's almost like even a disconnect when it comes to that. You have to question whether or not it's even sincere. I mean, I don't know. You said when we were here that you weren't sure you wanted to have this topic when we were first in the station.
Well, it's just something that I have tried.
You said you've tried to avoid.
I've tried to avoid it, honestly.
Why is that?
I've seen it so many times, and I've been actually involved in. I was involved in the aftermath of a terrorist bombing. And I was a volunteer in the hospital helping to identify the dead, and I saw some pretty heavy-duty stuff. And so, I had a friend who was shot at the Thurston shooting, and so I've seen it, and I know how horrifying or how horrible it is, and I don't want to just keep reliving it. I feel terrible for the victims' families, and I can't even fathom what they're going through because I've never had kids myself. So I don't know. I've just decided I didn't want to be that close to the story.
Well, I apologize, bro, for bringing it up.
No,
I
it's fine.
actually have a questions for you just based on that. So,
right.
During the call or the Thurston situation, I remember when that took place. I mean, were there not people praying on school grounds? Were not crosses put up?
I don't know. I wasn't there.
I saw pictures. I remember.
Okay.
I mean, the bottom line is, where is this argument of separation of church and state under these circumstances? It doesn't exist. And if it doesn't exist after the fact, then why are we making such a stink about it prior to the fact? That's what I don't understand. Makes absolutely no sense to me. The very thing that brings people together, unites people for a purpose, includes people in the lives of ordinary citizens. Why aren't we incorporating this prior to these circumstances and events? How can you sit back after something like this happens And look at the smoke and mirrors that's coming out of the White House, the smoke and mirrors that's coming out of the media. They're bringing up gun control. They're talking about, oh, we need to ban guns. I've got articles here. Obama signals action following school shooting. President Barack Obama is vowing to use whatever powers in his office holds to safeguard the nation's children, raising the prospect that he will pursue policy changes to stem gun violence in the wake of the elementary school massacre. This is from the Associated Press, December 17th. What choice do we have, he says. Are we doing what we can? If we're honest with ourselves, the answer is no. We're not doing enough. We need to change. Yeah, you're going to pass legislation. That's going to help. Is if we don't have enough gun laws and stuff now.
I don't think it's going to help.
It's not going to help.
It's not going to help. So let's talk about the moral decay you bring up.
Yeah.
Let's talk. I think for me, that is where it all starts. I think you can talk about bringing prayer into school. However, I believe that without parental guidance at an early age, in a faith-based religion, what is it going to mean to somebody who comes into school and we say, now we're going to have a moment of prayer? If you don't have that basis already in your being brought up, what do the words mean to you? You don't know what they mean. You don't really care. I firmly believe that everything is the fiber of the very family structures are breaking down, and that's where some of these issues are coming from, whether it's religion, school, the Pledge of Allegiance, any of that.
I agree, and that's actually a good point. I mean, it comes down to, the actual family unit has changed. The dynamics of it has changed in America, and how we go about raising kids is dramatically different. There was a time where, and I'm not suggesting this was the right course of action, or if it was great, where kids were kind of forced to go to church. I'm not necessarily, an advocate for forcing my kids to go to church, but I am going to sit down and I have a talk with them when it comes to religion and the spiritual aspect of things and who they are as an individual. I think that's a big, big, big deal. I don't actually attend church myself on Sundays. Okay, so it's for me to sit there and tell my kids to, you have to go to church. That's not, it wouldn't work for me. But the bottom line is I haven't ignored the spiritual aspect of who they are. And I think that parents, a lot of parents do, and I think that's a mistake.
I guess it's one of my rants that I could get on real easily. And having been in the school district for as long as I was able to see children that I started seeing them at kindergarten age. And as they advanced through the school system, I was able to move around through the school district to the various grade levels. And I saw the same children who started out as a 5-year-old come out and possibly graduate high school, possibly not. Those who had attendance problems, it never changed. You could tell exactly. You could tell which parents were doing the job and which parents weren't. There were always extenuating circumstances, I suppose, some misfortune in some families, but basically it followed a trend. And it seemed to me the more hopeless the situation was for these students, whether it being poverty, being abuse in the family, perhaps drugs, alcohol, it never changed. And it seems to me that these are the new folks that are going out now. They just have no direction. And I think it totally begins at home.
I agree. Okay, you remember that book, A Purpose-Driven Life?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That thing, it bestseller list. It absolutely flew off the shelves. People were absolutely hungry. They devoured it, ate it up. We're talking about circumstances and situations here where you have young males, because I've actually got statistics on this. I guess 96.5% of these mass shootings are done by young males.
That goes along with your profiling.
96.5%. Yeah, that goes along with the profile thing I was talking about. Most of them are under the age of 40. They're angry, dissatisfied, loners, they have few friends, socially inadequate, poor social skills. They're not clinically psychotic. They're very difficult to diagnose. They suffer from paranoia, have acute behavioral personality disorders. They harbor a severe grudge or murderous feelings towards someone. They have psychopathic, not psychotic tendencies. One is temporary, one is permanent. they like to create grandiose opinions of themselves in their minds to offset the low opinion that they actually have of themselves. And typically they kill themselves right after the killings, for the most part.
You know, that makes me ask a question based on those statistics, because that's been my understanding too. They typically kill themselves. I wonder what the basic is for a clinical diagnosis. I think you just read that there was no clinical.
They are.
Let's see.
It says they're hard to diagnose.
Yeah. So how can they even make that assumption if you can't diagnose them because they're already dead? I don't know.
Well,
how they base a
all they can do-
non-diagnosis.
Yeah, I mean, all they can do is take bits and pieces of these different scenarios. I mean, they've got quite a few to pull from, and then put the ones together that match.
I guess my point was that you could be clinically depressed and you'd never know it because the person was dead at that point. You'd never know.
Right. I think that, like you were saying earlier, in terms of the family unit, how we raise our kids, that type of thing, you know, I've been talking for weeks about men being men, women being women, and you know, people scoff at that type of thing. But the bottom line is, I think these young guys, I mean, they don't. There's definitely I don't even know if I have the right words, but there's almost like they definitely have felt an attack on who they are, and they don't feel capable or able to be who they are. They feel inadequate in some way. And I think that, especially young males, I think that they need to be challenged, and they need to have that sense of adventure in life, and they need to have that pursuit of something.
And what's going on? Why isn't that happening? Because they're sitting in front of a TV playing video games, and they're, into their television shows and else that keeps them in their own little world. They don't get outside of the house. They don't go out and do anything. And I don't know. I think that's pretty significant in, the change of the culture of, what used to be the American man. When we were young,
Exactly.
we were going outside. We had chores to do. We had all this and that.
Hunting and fishing. And
Right. Anymore, kids just sit in front of the TV all day long whenever they get an opportunity to. And so
We make
they
fun of
become
people who do that.
disconnected with society.
Therin, we make fun of people who do that.
Right.
That men that do that, we make fun of.
Yeah.
Right.
And what are they watching?
They know they're being made fun of, too, and they feel more and more isolated, I think. And so
Right.
I think this, it doesn't surprise me this is happening, because I think more and more people are becoming disconnected from society and more isolated.
Yeah, and like I said, they are not. They don't see the challenge or adventure in life. They don't have the pursuit. Purpose-driven life became such a success because people are longing for that. Mm-hmm. They need that. There's a spiritual aspect of things that goes along with being who you are and pursuing something in life, and those type of things are being lost. And it's young males that are definitely acting out.
And it seems like you could boil it down to one thing, that's structure. There is no structure in daily life, such as get up, brush your teeth, do your chores, go to school, come home and have some time, whether you're a small child, maybe an hour of computer time. But there's no outdoor activities, just like Therin says. Everybody is glued in front of a TV, it seems like these days, or on their phone.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I mean, not to rub you wrong, but I mean, that's kind of a liberal concept in terms of letting kids do what they want to do and not telling them what to do, and giving them options and multiple choices and stuff like that. I mean, you're talking about conservative values there.
I am.
That people attack.
I call it common sense values. I don't put a label on it.
See, this
liberal
is what I
or
love about you.
conservative.
This is what I love about you. I mean, seriously.
He loves me.
I do. I think it's great because I mean that's the bottom line.
Well,
I mean, so what? I mean, you've got these. Pardon my, French here, Leta, but you got these liberal d-bags out there that seriously, I mean, they're going to sit there, and they're going to, talk about, oh well, gee, you should let so and so, he's 8 years old, make his own decisions, his own choices, and you don't want to put your opinions or views on him. You know what? Kids need to be taught. They need to be trained. Your job as a parent, okay, is to give them some sort of direction. to give them some advice. You have years of wisdom. Share it with them.
how it
You know
should
what I
be.
mean?
Yeah.
I mean, it's a really common sense thing. You're supposed to share as a parent the things that you've experienced, the things that you've gone through in your life. You're supposed to share that with them in an effort that not only will they carry those things on, but also so it gives them some preparation on how to live their life so they can live a better life than you.
Kids definitely learn by what they see modeled for them. I can't stress how important that is. I guess the old saying, the acorn doesn't fall far from the tree, is so true. I see so many kids now that, or young adults, I should say, that don't even want to get a driver's license because they don't have to. They live in the cities. They don't even have to do that anymore. Catch a bus, walk, ride a bicycle. And I'm not suggesting there's anything wrong with that. It's just they don't have... They just don't have the gumption. They have no drive, no interest in anything.
Okay, so right before the break, I'm going to say one thing. What you described there is what I said earlier in terms of traditional family values. So tell me why we're encouraging young women to start and raise families on their own. Why are we saying, hey, it's okay? Dad doesn't have to be around. And why are we letting these young guys knock young women up and then not fulfill their responsibility? They simply send them a paycheck. I'd like to hear about that because I think that this is responsible on some of this stuff.
Right now?
Right now?
Right? You want me to talk right now?
You can start talking
I'll
right
start
now, but the
talking
bottom
right
line
now.
is
Okay, I'll
we're going to be
start.
going to a commercial real quick.
Okay, I've never said that it's okay for young women to start families without a male presence. I totally believe in the family structure. Marriage particularly, I'm not against living together, but there are benefits for being married, especially for the children. What was the other part? Maybe I should stop there. What was the other part?
Well, I mean, you're basically agreeing with what I'm saying. What I'm
Absolutely.
saying, Leta, is the bottom line is what you see in the liberal media and on TV and in movies and stuff like that is a total dismissal of the family unit.
I find
They
liberal...
see no value in it, and they kick it to the curb. We're going to go to a quick break here. We're going to be right back, folks.
Liberal TV.
I'll never forget that moment.
As long as I live.
As long as I live.
Several of us were working to rescue a family.
The house collapsed on top of the cellar door and trapped them.
We had to use Humvees and heavy machinery to move massive trees and debris.
We got them out.
We helped a lot of people out.
It felt good to know I could really make a difference.
Because I'm a citizen soldier in the National Guard.
Be there the moment your community needs you. Learn more at NationalGuard.com.
Sponsored by the National Guard. Aired by the Oregon Association of Broadcasters and this station.
Can I have a price check on aisle... Ma'am?
Yeah.
Don't look down, but there's a giant python wrapped around your leg.
Oh, yeah, I know. It's probably nothing.
Nothing? Shouldn't I don't know, like, call someone?
No, I don't have the time. I'm late as it is. If it keeps up, I'll have it looked at.
Are you sure? That's a pretty big snake.
No, I'm fine. Thank you, though. You're very sweet.
You wouldn't ignore this, so why ignore the signs of a stroke? If you or someone you know suddenly experiences numbness of the face, arm, or leg, or sudden trouble speaking, seeing, or walking, don't wait to get help. Call 911 right away, because time lost is brain lost. To find out more, visit www.strokeassociation.org or call 1-888-4STROKE. This message brought to you by the American Stroke Association and the Ad Council.
We are 1320 AM Info Radio.
Can I have a price check on aisle... Ma'am?
Yeah.
Don't look down, but there's a giant python wrapped around your leg.
Oh, yeah, I know. It's probably nothing.
Nothing? Shouldn't I don't know, like, call someone?
No, I don't have the time. I'm late as it is. If it keeps up, I'll have it looked at.
Are you sure? The pretty big snake.
No, I'm fine. Thank you, though. You're very sweet.
You wouldn't ignore this, so why ignore the signs of a stroke? If you or someone you know suddenly experiences numbness of the face, arm, leg, or sudden trouble speaking, seeing, or walking, don't wait to get help. Call 911 right away, because time lost is brain lost. To find out more, visit www.strokeassociation.org or call 1-888-4STROKE. This message brought to you by the American Stroke Association and the Ad Council.
Hello, Jacob Lark on the Common Sense Show. Give us a call here. The number's 541-284-7953. Here with Leta Sellers and Therin. We're talking about the mass shootings and how the bottom line is people need to quit taking prayer and stuff out of the equation and belief and a faith in God. I think it's an important thing. And it's frickin' obvious. That's the part that just torques me. We're going to sit here and discuss whether or not we should carry firearms when millions of people carry firearms on a day-to-day basis and nothing happens. But and we'll all get together, hold hands, and say prayers after the fact. But God forbid we talk about doing that prior. So, Leta, you wanted to talk about the liberal media before the break.
Well, and the media in general, I should probably say. Like I said before, I don't like to put labels, conservative or liberal. However, that's another big one with me. I look at what is going on in the media these days. These people, the gunmen, they get their name shown before anybody else's. They get all the attention. It is absolutely incomprehensible to me that they're almost go to hero status, and I call them the newsies. If the newsies weren't out there trying to drag out every little gory detail, it just sickens me. And if more people would turn off the television, it seems like that would be as good a way to combat this type of thing as anything out there. It just sickens me.
Well,
the
that
way
was
the
kind of
media.
my point in choosing not to go along with this story
Right.
as well, is because you have all these networks and they're all competing for viewership or listenership or what have you. And so they're wanting to get the details out there faster than the next guy, and a lot of the reporting
It's not even accurate.
Is inaccurate, exactly. So, you get the news on one day and then it's corrected the next day and what have you, and it's like I just didn't want to deal with it,
Well, see, this is my thing, because I actually went back and forth on whether I wanted to do this too. And typically when something like this happens, it's like I said at the beginning of the segment, you have people who write music or they write books or they do blogs, and something like this comes up and it's the first thing they do. They hit their computer, they hit their notepad, and they sit there and they start jamming out all sorts of stuff. It's almost like an inspiration type of deal. And I'm guilty of it too. I mean, my mind literally went racing with all sorts of causes and reasons on what took place and what's going on. The bottom line is the reason why I chose to actually go through it, because I actually didn't do a whole lot online. I posted a few things, but the way I chose to do it, because you have it's kind of a strange thing. You have on one side, you have people that are totally jumping on the gun control bandwagon, and they are literally. I mean, I've heard people that have been against, gun control after this take place go, oh, you know what? Now we need to consider it. Something needs to be done. It's like, you know what? Why? Because the body count works out for you now. Is there enough people dead now that you got to think about it? Or was it ridiculous before and it's ridiculous prior and it's ridiculous now? I mean, it's just kind of a ridiculous concept all the way around. So it doesn't matter whether it was the shooting at Columbine. It doesn't matter if it's 61 shootings later. It didn't work. It wasn't a good, valid concept then. It's not a good, valid concept now. The issue is deeper than that. This is a bigger issue. Okay? And anybody that doesn't even, anybody with even the remote half brain can figure that out. So why are we sitting here arguing on whether it's a single shooter, semi-automatic, whatever? I mean, it's the person holding the gun. That's the issue. The psychological component, the background under what made that individual, why you do what you do. That's the thing that fascinates me. That's one of the reasons why I wrote a book. I wrote a couple books. It's one of the reasons why I had this show. Why people do what they do. I find that incredibly interesting. So why people are doing this is a little bit more involved than the tool in which they do it. Shortly after this, the shooting here at was it Newark? Newport.
Newtown.
Newtown. Similar thing happened in China, only it was done with a knife. It's not the tool, friends, in which case it chooses to be done. It is what goes on behind the scenes, what lies beneath. That is the single most important thing that's going on in this circumstance, in these situations. And that's what needs to be looked at. And that's what needs to be discussed. And I'm not talking about it needs to be discussed from fanatical type of view where it's like, oh my gosh, we all need to immediately start attending church. I'm not saying that, although that wouldn't be a bad thing. But I'm not necessarily going for that aspect. I'm just saying there is a spiritual aspect of things when it comes to what makes up an individual, and that is something that's being ignored. And in terms of what I said in regards to young males in life, I'm sorry, they're being ran over.
Actually, I could be wrong here, but I think the profiling would actually say it was white young males.
That's my point. Okay, I mean, so it's white males.
Yeah.
Did you say it's not a racial?
No, I said I meant that the blacks are not included, so it couldn't be. Forget that I said that.
Yeah, I was going to say, wait a minute here. Blacks aren't included, so it can't be racial.
That's not what I meant.
Of course it can. I don't care if it's black or white. It's that racial element that's in the profiling, and frankly, I think it's okay.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with that when it comes to law enforcement. It's a necessary thing. It's an important thing. You need to know. Right now, the mass killings are being done by young white males. I don't feel bad about saying that. I wouldn't feel bad about saying that if the killings were being done by young black males. The point of the matter is, when we got somebody walking in the door with a gun, we need to know everything we can possibly know about him. Short hair, long hair, hazel eyes. Seriously. Every single physical characteristic and description you can possibly give to law enforcement to help them catch the perp. And there's nothing wrong with that. So, yeah, the profiling question, I posed it because I think it's an interesting thing. Is it suddenly okay now that we're talking about saving kids in schools? Wasn't okay before? I mean, if you have Muslim terrorists coming into the country and they have and they fit a certain profile, shouldn't we be actually considering that when they're at an airport or in a public place? I'm sorry. You know what? In terms of law enforcement, I think it's kind of a big deal. We should know those things. And it's a no-brainer. And this is the Common Sense Show, and we talk about common sense, and that's a common sense thing. So outside of that, I think that, like I said, I don't even see what's worth the argument there. Okay, so I have, you had mentioned the video game thing, Therin.
Yeah.
Stein, on the American Spectator, actually wrote an article. And it was written on 12/17/12. It's entitled God Help Us. And one of the guys he had quoted on here, John R. Cone Jr., said there is evil in the world. It's beyond mental illness, beyond gun control. It is evil. You have to be willing, and then this is me talking here, you've got to be willing to call evil evil. You got to be able to recognize what evil is, point at it, and go, that's evil. That's not okay. Something's wrong right there. You got to be able to say, hey, that's what it is. And you can't be worried about, it can't be political correct. I don't want to upset anybody. I want to step on anybody's toes. So you got to be really careful about it. No, you call evil evil. What's evil evil? Typically, I've gotten in arguments before, and this is total lunacy. I've gotten in arguments before with people who say, well, there's nothing in this world that's evil. There is no evil. Evil doesn't exist. It's fabrication of your brain. It's a fabrication of people. That's what they say. They're so quick to call something evil. And they say it's not really evil because good comes of it. And I'm not going to sit here and argue that good things don't come of bad things that happen. But that doesn't change what happened as being evil. That doesn't change evil from being evil. And they bring up, people argue, well, what is evil? I say, well, listen, the best descriptor of evil I would have that would point to it really quick, and I think there's no argument there, would be the rape of Nanking. Pure, absolute evil. Where thousands of people, of their own people, killed and raped each other. And they were buried in unmarked graves. And it happened years ago. You can Google it, look it up. Look up the rape of Nanking. That, to me, is evil. And I think throughout history, we have seen time and time again, we've had 2 world wars. We've had numerous wars in between. We've had different terrorist acts, happen all over the globe. We're witnessing, we're seeing evil. For anybody to sit there and try to argue that which is evil or not evil, you're insane. You're lunacy. You seriously got something mentally with your brain if you can't sit there and say, hey, that's evil.
I'm curious, Jake. When you keep using the word evil, evil is actually a descriptive word. to me, the act would be evil. Are you putting a different connotation on evil as in a supernatural type evil or a devil? Are we talking devil here?
I
Satan?
think that, absolutely. I think it's both.
Okay.
I think that there are actual acts that are evil, and I think that those acts are the descriptive, the embodiment of satanic evil.
Okay, I wanted to get to the bottom of where we were.
Satanic evil, that follow me here, likes to isolate, separate, and destroy its users. There is absolutely a spiritual aspect that we live in this life. It talks about in the Bible, Bible, that we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities and powers. I think there is definitely, now to help you New Agers out a little bit, I'm going to throw you guys a bone. Throw you guys a bone. I think that there is definitely good energies and bad energies. All right? Does that help you out a little bit there with that evil descriptive in terms of the spiritual thing? There's a bad energies out there, and you can see that, you can feel that as an individual. You can witness that when you come across certain people, certain circumstances, certain situations. It's kind of like that sixth sense type of deal going on.
I was just going to say, so you equate it to like a gut instinct.
Sure.
Perhaps.
Sure.
So you think that these shooters are possessed by evil, or this is not so much their own self-creation of their accumulation of thoughts?
I wouldn't necessarily say possession in the term of demonic possession, but do I think that there is evil at work in terms of their thought process, in terms of their activity, in terms of what they do, how they go about it? Absolutely.
So an entity could influence them?
Sure. Why not? Like I said, for the New Agers, you want to talk, if you get hung up on that, then let's just say bad energies. Bad energies influence them.
And I can see like where you were coming from, Leta, when you were talking about how these people, the shooters, end up becoming hero status a lot of times. And I think there's probably some individuals out there who are, make these guys their heroes, and it continues, yeah.
And my fear is too, a little bit, I don't really want to touch so much on gun control or anything like that, but so assuming assault rifles are banned, to me it just means that, so now the next individual who gets this idea that he's going to come up with even something more super horrendous, and he'll top the charts. And it just scares me. What will happen next?
So I'm just curious, just out of curiosity. Here we're talking about the spiritual aspect, the spiritual element, the fact that there is evil, and you guys really just switched gears. I mean, you just totally, you're like, you know what? We don't want to talk about that. We're just going to move on. See, and this is what I'm talking about.
Personally, I think we create our own worlds, right? We create our own existence.
I do too.
The person that you are is the person you are because of the thoughts that you think.
Why can't we talk about evil?
And evil's fine, but where's the evil coming from?
Why can't we talk about spiritual aspects of that which is evil?
So you're thinking it's coming from a completely different entity. It's not.
What if it is?
Well, what if it is?
What's wrong with that?
I definitely want to know.
Well, why can't we call it out and say, "Hey, this is evil," and there's possibly an entity or influence that's backing it?
I definitely like to hear it. I'd like to hear the story where it's coming from. But personally,
wait a minute. We're gonna sit here. We're gonna sit here, and we're gonna say that prayer is something that unites and binds us, and it makes us all. You know what? You don't think there's an opposing force out there?
Define prayer, please.
Huh?
Define prayer, please.
I don't understand the question.
Oh, okay,
do you not know what prayer?
Okay, I think prayer could be defined in many ways. You could say, please, God, don't let this ever happen to my family. I feel so bad. Please protect those. Or you can say, have a quiet moment, and you can also say, this is really, in the force of things, this is a horrible, horrible thing. I feel really bad. You can internalize it. You can externalize it. You don't have to even bring the word God into it.
Can prayer include foul language?
It could infer whatever floats your boat.
Oh, good, because I cuss a lot to God, and I just want to make sure
we're not talking to
right.
God. That's what I'm trying to clarify.
Prayer
does not mean you have to talk to God. See, that's my definition.
Okay, don't get hung up on the term, Leta.
I am hung up. You're the one using it.
No, you're hung up on the term God.
Okay, what would you like me to call it?
You can call it whatever you want. A flying spaghetti monster for all I
The
care.
Great
The bottom line
Spirit.
is, huh? Or the Great Spirit.
I'll call it the Great Spirit.
Or Allah, or whatever you want to call it.
No, I don't.
When you sit there, I was going to say,
Spirit.
when you're going to sit there and you have that solemn moment, when you reach out to your maker, whoever that may be, I'm telling you right now, you're praying.
Okay. Oh, I agree with that because but it's
When your soul is
okay.
searching,
So I'm not calling it God. I see
you
what
can
you're
call
saying.
it whatever you want.
Yeah.
I don't care.
All
I don't get
right,
hung up on that term.
I believe there is something greater than I.
Yeah, I don't get hung up on
But
that.
I don't go in, but not in the biblical sense.
And that's fine.
Okay.
Okay, so,
As long as we
so where were
clarify.
you going with that as far as the evil? You said, because the prayer brings people together.
Right.
Well, you talk about good things such as that bring people together and unite people, and if you, like I said, if you want to be kind of a new age about it, you can say whether there's good energies out there. Okay, don't you also believe that there's an opposing there's bad energies also?
Sure.
And is it wrong for us to point at it and go, that's it right there? I recognize it. I see it.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Something that isolates, separates, and destroys. That's the whole intent of this entity.
Be like
Because
positive.
we can't call it Satan and we can't say devil because people chuckle at those terms. So we're going to call it an entity, an evil entity.
So you can't call it positive energy or negative
We can.
energy?
Okay, so we can call it. Yeah, exactly.
We're
We'll
still
use that
doing
word.
semantics
The
here.
negative energy. Sure. Whatever you want to call it. Is it wrong to say that it exists?
Oh, negative energy definitely exists.
Absolutely.
I
Okay.
Right.
I just got
But-
an admission on both your part. The devil exists. Great.
But I'm
Okay, so
still-
we can move on. Okay, so
But it's
yeah,
still-
he's what?
we're lost.
No, but I still think it's self-created.
It's thank you.
Whether you're having a positive,
Yeah.
whether you're having positive energy or negative energy, you're
Do you
creating it.
believe?
It's not an
Do you
outside
believe
Right.
as we that
force.
we as individuals influence each other?
Yes, I
Yes.
Okay, so why is it so hard to believe that there's a possibly negative influence that on a happen is in our
Absolutely it
life?
does.
It's a person's
But we
negative
allow it.
influence could.
But
I'm
we-
not. Of course, we allow it there.
Right.
Of course, we allow it. I'm not going to argue that at all. We absolutely allow it.
Yes.
The point of the matter is, it's there. It's present, regardless of whether or not we allow it.
Right.
It's still wanting to attack us, to have an effect on our life.
Actually, we don't have to allow it.
No, we don't. We absolutely don't have to allow it. But I'm saying just because we don't allow it, just because we choose to
what you're
ignore
saying
it,
is the frequency is out
It's
there.
still
whether,
there.
Yeah.
Whether we tune into
it's
it
still
or
there.
not.
Sure.
Okay.
And
Yeah.
I-
It's still
yeah.
there.
We're all on the same
Sure.
page there.
I buy into that. Yeah.
Okay, great. So once again, we've all agreed that the devil exists. Okay, so Ben Stein.
A little bit of a stretch, but okay.
Ben Stein. Okay, God help us. He quoted this. Don't slap me. Okay, that's physical violence on your
That's
part.
right.
He attributes what you said to it before. He said video games. Video games is he's saying that the
I
video
think video
games
games
play a major role.
they're more damaging than what people think. I think prolonged.
I think so too.
Yeah, I had a guy who approached me a few months ago and asked me if I was much of a gamer, and I'm like, "Oh, is that what you call somebody who sits around and does absolutely nothing with their life except play video games?" No, I'm not much of a gamer, but I think it adds to the isolation that a person feels in their mind. That's their form of stimuli is video games, and it puts them into this completely different world for extended amounts of time, and they lose touch with society. They don't get out. They don't do anything. That becomes their world, and I think over a period of time.
Okay. Okay, this is the bottom line, and we're coming close to the end of the hour,
Right.
so we've got a few things I got to say, but I want to throw this out here. When's the last time you played video games?
It's been years.
Is it?
I loved video games. I'm just not very good at them.
Really? Are you familiar with any of the video games now?
No.
Because I'm just curious. I mean, I read Ben Stein's article, and I mean, he's the players. He says in these games, the player spends his whole day attempting to exercise his loneliness and low self-esteem by shooting imaginary creatures and creating damage all day long. At a certain point, just killing on the console blurs into real life. And then he goes on and on and on.
Yeah,
my son's a gamer, and unlike maybe other teenage boys, my son actually wanted to play games with me. So he like got me hooked up with the Xbox and the Xbox Live and stuff like that. And he's, wanted to include his dad and, being his dad. I thought, I should probably play because I'm not really interested in games, but I thought I should. And I'm telling you right now, I started playing these games and I figured it out. The games that you used to play in high school are not the same games as the ones today.
No, we were playing asteroids.
It's not just, it's beyond that, Therin, is my point. You're not sitting there alone by yourself staring at a computer playing a game. The games are like 100% more social now. All your friends that you just saw at school are all going to play the same game with you in the privacy of their own home. And you have these headsets, and you can talk to each other just like you and me are talking right now. And you can talk to each other through text and stuff on and during the game. And you can say, hey, Therin, we're going to go attack or we're going to go and bombard this base over here. You go left, I'll go right.
Okay.
And we're going to work as a team to get there and we get it done.
Now, see, I could get into that.
We're going to talk about, that's my point. We're going to sit there while we're playing the game and go, what'd you think of the math teacher? He sucked because math sucks.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's not an isolated thing. It is a social thing. And I'm not saying that that's the same for every kid. And I'm sure that there are some kids that feel very isolated and feel very lonely, whatever. But to make the general statement that all gamers are lonely, isolated, all they do is sit in front of the no, man. It's like to the bar after work and shooting the crap. Yeah. I almost said SHIT. Shooting the crap with your buddies.
You just did.
And having a beer. And how many people do that?
Right.
They do that. How many people, Facebook is a very popular thing. There's a lot of people on Facebook. Yeah. It's like Facebook, only with a game.
With a game.
It's no different. So from that aspect, I don't think it's the gaming situation. I think that's, once again, a smoke and mirrors.
Not all games are like that. I mean, there's a lot of games, where there's not that interaction, where it's just you against a computer.
And I'm not saying you shouldn't pull them out of the gaming world. I do that. I pull my son out and I say, hey, bro, let's go do something. Okay, so how many minutes we got?
We got 3 minutes.
3 minutes. I'm going to blow through the Tarbosh segment of the show, the Jabez prayer. Oh, that you'd bless me indeed and enlarge my territory, that be with me, that you'd keep me from evil, that I may not cause pain. So God granted what he requested. 1 Chronicles 4:10. That is an excerpt from the book, The Prayer of Jabez. It's by Bruce Wilkinson. Actually, was given that book a couple years ago. In that book, it actually dissects the Jabez prayer, talks about what it is, what it means. And I'm telling you right now, they've got a challenge in the book. And it challenges you to recite that prayer for a period of, I think, 60 days. And if you do that, your life will change. And oddly enough, it works. It really works. Apparently, based on the conversation we have, there actually is a power in prayer. And reciting that prayer actually works. It's called the Jabez prayer. I've actually got it pasted or actually put up in my restroom. And that is the Tarbosh segment of the show. Look up that excerpt, 1 Chronicles 4:10. Get the book, The Jabez Prayer by Bruce Wilkinson. Check it out. Got some quick info for you. There's a small company called Downtown Tree and Garden located in Eugene that does tree pruning, edging, weeding, bark mulch, landscape renovation, remodeling. They're licensed, bonded, insured. The owner is Melvin Snyder. I had him do some work at my mom's house. It turned out great. They did a great job, and the prices were reasonable. So if you need some work done or would like to get an estimate, give Mel a call at 541-741-8856. That number again is 541-741-8856. Ask for Mel. If you like what you heard on the show today, please sponsor the show. Go to www.buycommonsense.com. Click on the link to the show. Check out the sponsor section of the site. And Leta, Therin, give you guys the last words.
I just wanted to quickly say, just to me, the most important thing is to hug your kids. Tell them you love them. I mean, my gosh. It doesn't matter what they've done. You love them unconditionally, always, and just give them a hug.
I really appreciate you being on the show, by the way.
Thanks, Jacob. This was a hard one to talk about. I had a hard time finding words. So
I kind of figured we'd be a little bit more on the same page on this one, but I appreciate your input, and Therin, I appreciate you giving me input too.
And thanks for tuning in.
Yeah.
We'll catch you next time.
See you folks next week.